Somewhere in the territory of the Supreme Dojo, there was a large tree, and beneath the tree sat a man dressed in military clothing. In front of him was a table filled with bottles of alcohol. This man was none other than Dong Xingyi. As the leaves from the tree were falling to the ground, with an expression full of sadness and regret, he grabbed another bottle and prepared to take another drink to forget his troubles. Two junior disciples walk by, and one of them greets him with a grin. Casually asking why his senior brother drowning himself in booze, he jokes, wondering if this is some kind of martial art style that requires him to be drunk. He even laughs, saying that he thought this kind of thing only existed in novels and marveling at how their school is full of surprises. With a curious gaze, the boy mocked Dong Xingyi again, saying that their martial school was full of talents. The friend's eyes filled with fear, causing him to start sweating and panicking. He quickly covered the boy's mouth and with an angry gaze asked what he was doing and if by any chance he didn't know who he was. The jokester freezes, clearly shocked. The broken man before him doesn't match the image of the leading senior brother he had in his mind. The other disciple sighs and explains that their senior brother's martial path was shattered, which caused him to act this way. For them, it's hard to imagine someone capable of taking down someone like their senior brother who's already at the 8th level. But the world is full of prodigies, and there's always someone stronger out there, so it's wise to stay humble and respectful. Dong Xingyi took another sip from the bottle of alcohol, and while he was venting his sorrows, a woman began walking toward him from behind, catching his attention. Their conversation doesn't just catch Dong Xingyi's ears. Wanwen overhears it too. She sighs and walks toward Dong Xingyi. Dong Xingyi gives her a bitter smile and asks if she's come to mock him like everyone else. Without waiting for a reply, he takes another long swig of his drink. Wanwen leans in and whispers something quickly in his ear. Whatever she says lands like a thunderbolt. Dong Xingyi's face shifts from misery to utter shock. He immediately asks if she's serious. Wanwen assures him it's true, saying she overheard it from her mother, and even the news is broadcasting it everywhere. Dong Xingyi stands frozen for a moment, then suddenly smashes the bottle in his hand onto the ground. The despair in his eyes vanishes, replaced by a fiery determination. If even the Jai Dao martial saint himself got wrecked and had his ass kicked that badly, then who was he to wallow in self-pity? With that thought, he clenches his fist and slams it into the old tree beside him, declaring that there's no point in comparing himself to that kind of freak. His blow was so powerful that more leaves began to fall from the tree onto the ground, his eyes filled with determination and vengeance. He didn't want Lu Sheng to die, so he decided to help search for him. Lin Wanwen, who was standing behind him, placed her hand over her chest and couldn't help but be somewhat surprised since she hadn't expected this reaction from him. At last, Dong Xingyi came out of his depression arc and began walking toward the exit, determined to find Lu Sheng. Seeing this, Lin Wanwen's eyes widened with joy, bringing a smile to her face. She was happy to see that he had finally regained his spirit. Meanwhile, near where Lu Sheng disappeared, the military's search efforts had expanded to cover a vast stretch of the surrounding ocean, spanning over 100 nautical miles. They had also pushed their search depth to the extreme 8,000 meters, almost to their limit. Yet, there was still no sign of General Lu. A junior officer reported this disappointing update to the Central Marshal, who, unsurprisingly, was far from pleased. The Marshal, his expression cold, ordered them to expand the search further, wider, deeper, and more thorough. The officer hesitated, expressing concern that they might have already ventured into the deep sea abyss. Where conditions made further exploration near impossible, the Marshal looked at him and then asked a simple question. Which did he think was harder, producing someone strong enough to defeat a martial saint or braving the cracks of the deep sea abyss? The officer quickly saluted and acknowledged the command. Over at the fleet, the Eastern Marshal stood at the bow of a ship. He murmured to himself, praying that the hope of the military for the last 200 years would not be extinguished here. In the depths of an underground cave, 30,000 meters down, there were fish swimming calmly, and among them was a marine beast shaped like a lanternfish with 3 eyes and sharp teeth. The beast was prowling around in search of food. After swimming for a while, the beast began to feel a strange golden energy coming from a cave. It was somewhat confused as it did not know what was happening, but before it could react, its body was suddenly pierced by something sharp. In the blink of an eye, it was snatched and dragged into the abyss, vanishing into the shadows. We are then brought to a chilling scene. The place is littered with fish bones, and amidst the faint golden glow are grotesque tentacles feeding on the blood and flesh of strange sea beasts. These weird-looking things are from none other than Shang himself. The tentacles emerge from his chest, and grotesque, unnerving eyes are scattered across them. His entire body has been twisted into something that barely resembles a human. Despite how bad he looked, our boy's mind remains intact. Observing his grotesque transformation, he can't help but think he's starting to look quite like that of a Cthulhu. This was the consequence of drinking the remaining half of the saint's demise. While the powerful energy saved his life, it also mutated his body into this half-human, half-monster form. Still, he consoles himself. It's better than being dead. He sat down, placed his hands on top of his knees, closed his eyes, and began to meditate, making blue energy appear around his body. His body was almost completely disfigured, and despite having internal and external problems with it, looking at it from a positive side, he had managed to survive. Our boy was happy since he hadn't died after being attacked by a level 10 attack, thinking that he was incredible. Shang's eyes filled with rage, causing him to clench his teeth tightly due to the fury. He could not believe that in this world there truly existed traces of a powerful level 10 warrior. It was strange since nothing about it was mentioned in the registration system. He did not know if that warrior belonged to this world or perhaps was from another era and another dimension. He remembered that before the first year of the martial era, it had been a purely technological age, and there had never been any record or document related to ancient civilizations dedicated to martial arts. Otherwise, the era would not even have been called the first year of the martial era. Could this mysterious 10th level figure be from a different world entirely, or perhaps not even from this time period? After all, before the martial year 1, the world had been purely technological, with no records or remnants of ancient martial civilizations. That's why this era was defined as the start of the martial year, the only plausible explanation, and he reasons perhaps this person wasn't of this planet and must be a being from an advanced martial civilization from another planet. However, the thought sends a chill through his body, yet deep inside it also sparks a dangerous curiosity. As our boy mulled over the situation, his thoughts turned to the timeline of events. From the first appearance of the beasts to the rise of martial arts, it had only been 300 years. Zhao Jai had become a martial saint a bit over a century ago, meaning he was one of the first martial saints in history. The tentacles moved quickly, capturing 2 fish without even giving them time to react. Zhao Jai had become a martial saint of martial arts 100 years ago. From the initial level of first-level warrior to the emergence of 9th-level warriors, only a period of 100 years had elapsed. When Shang had read about this in school books, it hadn't seemed like much at all, but now that he thought about it calmly, he realized that this process, from nothing to something, was too fast. He began imagining an army of men in the city. Even now, all routes from level 1 to level 9 had already been marked out by predecessors, and although the army would employ all its resources trying for a new level warrior to be born, they wouldn't achieve it even in 100 years, much less during those early days on the martial path when everything was arduous and difficult and progress groped forward through darkness. Shang didn't know what merits or abilities Zhao Jai possessed to reach level 9 within a century since martial arts began. The only explanation that made sense was external help. If a higher martial civilization had intervened, everything would fall into place. But then came the unsettling question. Why would an advanced civilization bother helping a less developed one like Earth? As his tentacles instinctively grabbed another beast, Lu Sheng's mind connected the dots. Perhaps the invasion of the beasts was the starting point of it all. He pieced it together. Imagine a fragile technological civilization suddenly invaded by powerful creatures from another world, teetering on the brink of extinction. At that critical moment, a higher martial civilization swoops in, granting the weaker one just enough strength to defend itself and hold its own against the invaders. It felt like a scripted process, as if everything followed a calculated plan. Closing his eyes, Lu Sheng considered a chilling possibility. What if the battlefield of the beast's invasion was far larger than he had imagined? What if Earth was just a tiny corner of a massive war zone? And what if the advanced martial civilization that helped open the path for Earth's martial arts was already battling the invasion on a much larger scale? If his theory was correct, then what he'd seen so far was just the tip of the iceberg. Despite the grotesque state of his body, there was one silver lining. The body allowed him to instinctively hunt and feed on nearby beasts, constantly replenishing his energy. He could even feel the remnants of that powerful 10th level energy in his chest gradually being worn away. Normally, these mutated cells would disappear quickly, but perhaps due to the unique conditions of the deep sea abyss. Where the rules were much weaker, these cells hadn't died off. Lu Sheng couldn't help but marvel at the biological instincts of the mutated cells. Even without his control, they relentlessly hunted and devoured everything around them. With a wry smile, he thought of it as the ultimate AFK healing session.